The house was too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the eerie, unsettling silence that settles in when something big is about to happen. Our parents had just left for the weekend, leaving the place entirely to us, me, Ryan, and our two friends, Jake and Ethan. It should have been the perfect setup for a weekend of gaming, bad movie marathons, and raiding the fridge without judgment. But something felt off. I stood in the hallway, staring at the front door as if expecting them to suddenly change their minds and walk back in. No luck. The click of the lock was the final confirmation, it was just us now. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't just any weekend. It was the first time I'd be alone with Ryan since everything started feeling different. Ryan, my twin brother, had always been the person I understood better than anyone. We had the same inside jokes, the same love for late-night snacks, and an unspoken rule to always have each other's backs. But lately, I'd caught myself hesitating around him, second-guessing the easy way we'd always been. And it was all because of him. Because of the way his eyes lingered a little too long when he looked at me. Because of the way his voice dipped, quieter and more deliberate, when he asked if I was okay. Because of the way his hand brushed against mine last week, just a casual touch, nothing out of the ordinary, but it had set my brain on fire like an electrical short circuit. I hadn't said anything, of course. What could I even say? I turned around to find him standing there, watching me. He wasn't smiling, but there was something in his expression, something unreadable, something that made my stomach twist in ways I couldn't explain. "You good?" His voice was casual, but I could hear the undertone of something else. Something heavier. I nodded too quickly, like a guy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "Yeah. Just thinking." Ryan tilted his head, considering me. Thinking about what? My brain scrambled for an answer, but the truth was a tangled mess I couldn't untangle. Instead, I gave the safest, most predictable response. Nothing. Just the house feels weird without them. He snorted. Yeah, like a horror movie waiting to happen. I forced a laugh. Right. Any second now, some creepy doll's gonna show up at the door. His lips twitched into a smirk, and for a moment, it felt normal again. Just two brothers messing around, no weight, no confusion. But then his smirk faded, and he took a step closer, his eyes never leaving mine. "Creepy dolls aside," he said, his voice lower now, "you've been acting weird lately." I froze. "No, I haven't." He arched an eyebrow. "Dude. You literally just jumped like I accused you of robbing a bank." My mouth opened, then closed again. He wasn't wrong. I had been acting weird. And he'd noticed. Great. I swallowed hard, shoving my hands into my pockets as if that would somehow ground me. I dunno, man. Just stuff on my mind. Ryan watched me for a long second, and something passed through his expression, something knowing. My pulse jumped. "Stuff," he repeated, like he was waiting for me to fill in the blanks. Before I could figure out how to respond without setting myself on fire from the inside out, Jake's voice called from the living room. "Are you two coming, or are you planning a dramatic twin telepathy session without us?" The moment shattered. I let out a breath, grateful for the distraction, and shoved past Ryan, heading toward the living room. Coming. But as I walked away, I could feel his gaze still on me, burning through the back of my head. Yeah. This weekend was going to be interesting. The house had settled into a comfortable hum of voices, the occasional burst of laughter from the living room where Jake and Ethan were arguing over which movie to watch. It should have felt normal. It should have been just another weekend. But as I stood in the hallway, my mind was anything but calm. I could still feel it. That moment in the doorway. The way Ryan had looked at me, and not like my twin, not like the person I'd spent my whole life with, but like he was seeing me for the first time. And that scared the hell out of me. I turned away from the living room noise and headed upstairs, needing a second to breathe. The air felt cooler up here, quieter. Safe. But just as I pushed open the door to our bedroom, Ryan was already there, sitting on his bed, scrolling through his phone. His eyes flicked up, and just like that, the air changed. Escaping the chaos, he asked, setting his phone down. I shrugged, suddenly regretting coming up here at all. Just needed a break. Ryan smirked, leaning back on his elbows. You mean a break from me? My stomach flipped, but I forced out a laugh. Dude, what? He tilted his head, studying me. And there it was again, that look. That knowing look, like he had me all figured out. You've been weird all day, he said. Actually, longer than that. I swallowed, looking away. I have not. Aha. He sat up fully now, his voice quieter. Then why won't you look at me? I clenched my jaw. My hands were in my pockets again, when had I put them there? It was like my body was trying to hold itself together. Ryan sighed. Dude. I know you. His voice was steady, but not teasing anymore. Something's up. I had two options. Keep pretending, keep dodging, keep running. Say something, anything, before this tension swallowed me whole. I took a shaky breath. I don't know, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. It's just different lately. Ryan didn't move, but I could feel him listening. Really listening. Different how? I opened my mouth, closed it again. How was I supposed to say it? Because I don't know when I started noticing you in ways I shouldn't wasn't exactly an easy sentence to spit out. I shook my head. Forget it. Ryan exhaled, but instead of pressing me, he just watched me. After a long pause, he reached for something on the nightstand, his hoodie, and tossed it at me. Fine. You don't want to talk? At least stop standing there looking like you're gonna short circuit. I caught the hoodie, staring at him. What? He smirked. You always steal my hoodies when you're stressed out. Might as well skip the part where you pretend you're fine and just take it. I wanted to throw it back at him. I wanted to tell him he was annoying. But instead, I pulled it over my head. Because he was right. His gaze softened just a little. And for a second, it felt like we were just us again. But then, a knock at the door. Ethan's voice cut through the moment. Yo, you guys coming or what? Jake's picking some weird horror movie and I need backup. Ryan looked at me, raising an eyebrow like he was waiting for me to make a decision. I nodded, stepping back. Yeah. We're coming. But as I turned toward the door, I could still feel his eyes on me, like a silent conversation left unfinished. And I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. The living room was dimly lit, the only glow coming from the TV screen where some low-budget horror movie played, all grainy shadows and exaggerated jump scares. Jake and Ethan were sprawled on the couch, half watching, half scrolling through their phones, muttering complaints about the movie's terrible CGI. Ryan and I sat on the floor, backs against the couch, legs stretched out. It wasn't unusual, we'd always done this, always taken our spots without thinking. But tonight, nothing felt casual. Not after what happened upstairs. The fabric of Ryan's hoodie felt too warm against my skin, like it was still carrying his body heat. And he was too close, our arms resting side by side, our knees brushing slightly when one of us shifted. I told myself it was normal. That I was overthinking. That this was just another movie night. Then, our hands touched. Not by accident. Not in the clumsy, distracted way people bump into each other. His fingers brushed against mine, a slow, deliberate touch. A test. A pulse shot up my arm, straight to my throat, and suddenly I wasn't breathing. I could have moved away. I could have pretended not to notice. But I didn't. Instead, I let my hand stay where it was. Ryan didn't move either. The weight of our hands resting there, barely touching, felt heavier than it should have. My skin was on fire, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. And then, a sudden, ridiculous screech from the TV made me flinch, grabbing Ryan's arm before I could stop myself. Jake barked out a laugh. "Dude, that was the fakest scream ever." Ethan snorted. "I think the budget for this movie was, like, $10. My pulse was racing for an entirely different reason. I'd grabbed onto Ryan without thinking, my fingers clutching his sleeve. And I still hadn't let go. Slowly, I forced my hand to relax, pulling away. Ryan didn't say anything, but I felt the way his muscles tensed under my grip before I let go. I swallowed hard, forcing my attention back to the screen. But the movie blurred in front of me. Because now, I couldn't think about anything else except that Ryan hadn't moved away. That I hadn't moved away. And that I didn't want to. The horror movie finally ended, mercifully, if you asked me. Ethan declared it the worst thing ever put on a screen, and Jake argued that the bad effects made it so bad it's good. Ryan didn't comment. I wasn't sure if he even knew what the movie was about. Because the whole time, our hands had been there. Close. Not quite touching anymore, but not far either. And every nerve in my body had been hyper-aware of it. So when Jake clapped his hands together and said, "All right, new plan, we're playing truth or dare," my stomach dropped. "Dude," Ethan groaned, already stretching out on the couch. "What are we, 13? "Yes," Jake said. "Now shut up and play." Ryan smirked, leaning back against the couch. "This is gonna end in disaster." I had no idea how right he was. It started harmless. Jake had to text his ex something embarrassing. Ethan had to do a handstand and failed miserably. Ryan was dared to drink the absolute disaster that was our unfinished soda milk coffee experiment from earlier in the night. Then it was Ethan's turn. And he turned to Ryan with a grin that made my pulse spike. "All right, hotshot," Ethan said. "I dare you to kiss someone in this room." My body went cold. Jake let out an obnoxious laugh. "Oh, here we go." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep my expression neutral. It was a joke. It had to be a joke. Ryan would pick some easy way out, give Ethan a quick kiss on the cheek or something dumb, and everyone would move on. But Ryan wasn't laughing. His eyes flicked around the room, dragging the moment out. Jake was grinning, waiting for the joke to land. Ethan was watching, clearly enjoying making things awkward. Then Ryan's gaze stopped, on me. Just for a second. Just long enough for my chest to tighten. No. No way. This was a joke. He wasn't. Ryan smirked. "All right." And before I could react, before I could move, he leaned in. And kissed me. It was fast. Just a quick press of his lips against mine. But my world tilted. I couldn't process it. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't do anything except sit there, frozen, as heat surged up my spine. The moment lasted maybe 2 seconds. But my entire body locked up, my brain short-circuiting. Ryan pulled away like it was nothing. Like my heart hadn't just tried to jump out of my chest. Jake burst out laughing. "Dude, what the?" Ethan howled. Okay, I did not think you'd actually do it." I forced out a strained chuckle, my skin still burning. "Yeah. Same." It sounded wrong. Forced. Like I wasn't entirely here. Ryan was watching me. Not smirking now. Not teasing. Just watching. The game moved on. Ethan asked Jake something stupid. More days were thrown around. But I wasn't listening. Because my brain was still replaying what just happened over and over again. And the worst part? It wasn't the fact that Ryan kissed me. It was the fact that I didn't want him to stop. The game ended. The laughter died down. Ethan and Jake eventually retreated upstairs to sleep, leaving Ryan and me alone in the living room, the glow of the TV flickering between us. I should have gotten up. Should have mumbled something about being tired and gone upstairs. But my body refused to move. My mind was still stuck in that moment, that kiss. Ryan hadn't brought it up. Not once. And that was worse than if he had. Because it meant I had to. The air between us was thick, buzzing with something unspoken. Ryan sat on the couch, his elbow resting on the armrest, eyes on me like he was waiting for me to say something. I swallowed, throat tight. We need to talk. Ryan's expression didn't change, but his body tensed just slightly. Yeah. We do. I exhaled slowly, forcing my hands to stay still, not to fidget, not to shake. That kiss? Ryan cut me off. You don't have to freak out about it. His voice was steady, careful. Like he was trying not to scare me off. I let out a short laugh, but it sounded wrong. Dude. You kissed me. Ryan shrugged. Casual. Too casual. It was a dare. I flinched. Because that word, dare, made it sound like it meant nothing. Like I hadn't spent the last half hour spiraling over it. I licked my lips, forcing myself to meet his gaze. Was it just that? Just a joke? Ryan was silent. The seconds stretched. And then... No. My stomach dropped. I don't know what I expected him to say. Maybe some easy, offhanded comment to laugh it off. Maybe an apology for making things weird. But not that. Not honesty. I sat back, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. Then what was it? Ryan hesitated. Ryan never hesitates. But now, he looked like he was choosing his words carefully. I don't know, he admitted. But I've been thinking about it. About you. I stopped breathing. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling like he was finally letting out something he'd been holding onto for too long. And I think you have too. Panic gripped me. I shot up from the couch like I'd been burned. No, I said, too fast. Too harsh. No, I haven't. Ryan stood too, eyes locked onto mine. Alex. His voice was softer now. Knowing. Don't lie. I shook my head, stepping back. I can't. You won't. Silence. He was right. I wouldn't say it. Wouldn't admit that my brain hadn't stopped spinning since that moment in the movie. Since our hands touched. Since his lips met mine. Because if I said it, it would be real. Ryan watched me carefully, his voice quieter now. Look. I don't know what this means. I don't know what we're supposed to do about it. A pause. But I know I don't want to pretend nothing happened. I clenched my jaw, my hands curling into fists at my sides. I wanted to run. To deny. To make some joke and push this moment back into the shadows where I could ignore it. But I couldn't. Because Ryan wasn't letting me. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't want him to. I took a shaky breath, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't either. Ryan's eyes softened just slightly, and for the first time all night, I felt like I could breathe. We weren't figuring it all out tonight. But we weren't running from it either. And that was enough. The house was silent. Not the eerie, unsettling kind of silence from before, but a charged, expectant quiet, like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting to see what we would do next. Ryan and I stood there, inches apart, in the dim glow of the TV screen. I could still hear the echo of my own words in my head. I don't either. It was the first real admission. The first time I let myself say it, even if I didn't fully understand what it was. Ryan exhaled, something unreadable flashing in his eyes. He nodded, like he was accepting what I said, even if neither of us knew what came next. I swallowed hard. So, what do we do now? Ryan was quiet for a moment. Then, instead of answering, he took a step closer. Slow. Measured. Like he was giving me time to move away. I didn't. His hand brushed against mine. Just barely. A whisper of contact, a silent question. I could have pulled back. Could have pretended I didn't feel the way my heart was slamming against my ribs. But instead, I turned my hand over. Just enough for his fingers to ghost over my palm, then my wrist, then finally curl around mine. It was barely a touch. Nothing dramatic. But it felt like everything. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Ryan? His voice was steady when he spoke, but I could hear the tension underneath. We don't have to figure it all out tonight. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. He gave my hand a small squeeze. Reassuring. Grounding. But I don't want to pretend this isn't real. I lifted my eyes to his, searching for something, anything, that would make this feel less terrifying. But all I saw was the same thing I felt. And maybe that was enough. The air shifted again, the space between us practically humming. I knew what was going to happen before it did. And this time, I didn't pull away. His lips met mine, soft, tentative, like we were both still figuring this out. But the moment they did, something inside me clicked. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't some dramatic, movie-style moment. It was just us. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, maybe years, I wasn't afraid of it. When we pulled back, his forehead rested lightly against mine. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Then, a noise upstairs. A floorboard creaking. The spell broke, and I remembered. Jake and Ethan were still here. The world outside this moment was still there, waiting. I stepped back, my brain scrambling for logic, for normalcy. We should, probably head to bed. Ryan studied me, his expression unreadable. Then, after a beat, he nodded. Yeah. Probably. But before I could move, he reached out again, his fingers brushing against mine one last time. A silent promise. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning.